very good. You know.
Something just occurred to me. You know that regulations like they state that you have to have a certain amount of Australian content on TV, right? Do you think that networks sometimes they just use like reruns constantly just to satisfy that regulation?
I think the regulation says that it has to be new drama.
Yeah, it has to be new.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't stayed up with the Australian content rules, but I'm sure the networks will do whatever's cheaper. That's a given. It's a business. They're running a business. If there were no Australian content regulations, they probably wouldn't do any, except maybe some super popular shows that are going to work. They probably wouldn't do it.
I think you were telling me when we were on the phone the other week about either you're doing it now or you've just done it recently about people and their relationship with HD in the home. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I haven't published yet,
so
I've got to be careful. I'm not allowed to really. But basically, to give you a little background, I did my Masters on digital television, and the reason I did my Masters on that, and I started on that in 2002, is being from the film industry and then reading in all the newspapers how digital TV was a disaster and a dead dog and how the government had made a big mistake of it. And I thought, okay, that's really interesting. I want to research that and find out for myself whether that's true. And I just assumed what was written in the paper was actually correct, as you do. And then I started reading more and more about it and doing my own research, and I realised that there's actually a campaign being run here by some vested interests in the media who are running this campaign against high definition in the government. And I was quite shocked. I actually went in thinking one thing and came out of my Masters thinking totally the opposite. Heaven forbid, I actually thought the government done the right thing with their mandates. And so that taught me a lesson about the media, particularly the print media. Like, don't believe anything you read, because there's often an agenda behind it, a business agenda. It's quite amazing what goes on. So anyway, I learned that was more focused, the Masters was more focused on the technology side of it. And all through my reading for my Masters, I kept coming across, and also in conferences I'd go to, and I also spoke at a conference in Canberra, the Broadcasting Authority conference, and I was, one of the people I was on the panel with was from Channel 7, head of digital or something from Channel 7, and anyway, they all kind of got stuck into me and said, nobody wants HD. It's a total waste of time. I don't know why you're going on about it. But what amazed me is no one had actually seen HD. If you go back to 2002, no one had seen high definition. It wasn't around. You couldn't go into the store and see it. There were no plasmas in shops. There was they weren't broadcasting it. They started in 2001, but it wasn't much, and even before that, there certainly wasn't any. So how can you say people don't want something when they haven't even seen it? Another one, there was a study done by an academic sort of study done in Australia where they sent out a questionnaire to all the people in the media industry. And on the questionnaire, this was before HD was launched, and they said, what do you think is the future of broadcasting in Australia, roughly, and in terms of digital and all that? And of course, all the people they sent the questionnaire to had never seen, most of them had never seen HD because it wasn't available. The only place you'd see HD is if you were in that niche and you had access to HD content, because there weren't any HD cameras around. And you had HD monitors, which were like $20,000. So they sent that questionnaire out, and it came back, and surprise, surprise, 95% of people said, "Oh no, there's no future. HD is not the future. It's interactive TV." And they went out and held that out and said, "Oh look, this is proof." But it wasn't proof because no one had seen it. So that's what fascinated me about that. How can you judge something on something you haven't seen? And I knew from my own experience, once I saw how good high def looked. It was just amazing. It was like looking out of a window. And then when anyone else saw it that I knew, they had a similar reaction. This is amazing, where can I get it? So finally I got around to doing a PhD, and the problem with a PhD is by the time you actually get around to doing it, the question you originally asked has already been answered. But I was interested in that idea of what happens, what do people really think? Not just presume that you know what people think about something from what they've got, like to actually go into someone's home and ask them and see how they watch their TV, interact with their TV and ask them questions about it and get, first-hand information about what they think of it. And it hadn't been done in Australia, been done to a limited extent in the US, but very little of it. So you got all these opinions being made, and proclamations all around the world. Oh, people don't want this, people don't want that. And no one had actually gone in and, very few people had actually gone and tested it for themselves. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to go in the home and see what people are doing with their big plasmas. And that's what it's about. And it's not just about, it's about cinema. Does the home become more like a cinema? If you put a big plasma on the wall or a home cinema in your living room, how does that change the dynamics of your viewing? Does it become more like the cinema? Are your kids still going to interrupt when you're trying to watch? And then it was a really interesting point in time because I also looked at status. It's probably worn off now. Everyone's got a plasma. But 2 or 3 years ago, you only had a plasma TV or a large screen TV if you had a spare $10,000 or even $5,000. And because they were expensive, so it was a status symbol. If you had a plasma or had a large screen TV, you it was like having a BMW in the driveway. And that's something I discovered as I got into it. Is that for a lot of people it wasn't even about the pictures, it was just about having the latest device to show off.
Statement.
Which is that's a whole area in a lot of technology, isn't it? I wonder whether the iPad thing is we all want an iPad now, but I wonder in 2 years whether it'll kind of be the novelty where it will worn off and there's no status attached to it anymore.
It's even funny with that because iPads, there's always been tablets around.
Mm.
But just because
It's more like an Apple.
It's
brand
the Apple
it's an
loyalty
Apple,
thing,
that's what I'm
yeah.
saying, because it's an Apple product, it's be all and end all.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Apple's very, very good at it. They're very good at getting that across, I think.
I think we've actually covered pretty much all the questions, which is good.